right, so we finished book 9 where Odysseus first talks about their leaving of Troy. They sacked the Cicones, but got carried away and tried to take too much plunder away. And then they ran away with nothing. They ended up in the land of the Lotus Eaters, and anyone who ate the fruit from the land of the Lotus Eaters lost all their memory and didn't want to return home. Then they met the Cyclops Polyphemus, who ate many of the men and tried to keep them prisoner, and they managed to escape by tying themselves under sheep. We started book 10, where Odysseus continues his story. He talks about the Aeolian Islands, where King Aeolus gives him the winds as a parting gift, and his crew opens up that bag of wind right as they reach Ithaca, and they are blown back to Aeolus. Aeolus does not help them again. They sail away, and they end up with the Lastrygonians. The Lastrygonians are another type of giant people who eat people. They are cannibals. Then Odysseus finally manages to escape the Lastrygonians with only his own ship, and they arrive at Circe's island. There they rest for 2 days, and Odysseus goes out to hunt. He finds a deer, he brings it back. They split up into 2 teams, and Eurylochus's team is the one that goes forward. Eurylochus's team meets Circe. They go into her hall, and she turns them into pigs. Only Eurylochus survives. He runs back to the ship and tells Odysseus that they have to leave. The men have vanished. There's no way to save them. They have to leave. Instead, Odysseus goes to the palace of Circe. On the way, he is stopped by Hermes, who is disguised as a young man. Hermes tells him that this drug, called moly, would make him immune to Circe's potion. He tells Odysseus to threaten Circe, and when Circe cries and begs for him to have sex with her and sleep with her, that he forces her to make a promise that she would never hurt him. And that's where we ended before. At the same time, her handmaids bustled through the halls, 4 in all, who performed the goddess's household tasks. Nymphs, daughters born of the springs and groves, and the sacred rivers running down to open sea. So here we get a little description of her handmaidens. Her handmaidens are nymphs. They are daughters of trees and rivers. Of springs, of like little bubbling waters. They are the spirits of the waters. And one draped the chair with fine crimson covers over the seat she'd spread with linen cloths below. A second drew up silver tables before the chairs and laid out gold trays to hold the bread. A third mulled heady, heart-warming wine in a silver bowl and set out golden cups. A fourth brought water and lit a blazing fire beneath a massive cauldron. The water heated soon, and once it reached its boil in the glowing bronze, she eased me into a tub and bathed me from the cauldron, mixing the hot and cold to suit my taste, showering head and shoulders down until she'd washed away the spirit-numbing exhaustion from my body. The bathing finished, rubbed me sleek with oil, throwing warm fleece and a shirt around my shoulders. She let me to sit on a silver-studded chair, ornately carved, with a stool to rest my feet. So here we are seeing Odysseus being treated like a king. like the king he actually is, right? Um, they're bringing him gold to eat off of. They're heating up wine nice and warm in silver. They're bathing him. They're anointing him with oils. They're making sure that he feels like a king, like he is being treated well here. And that is, what he's used to, because back in Ithaca, he is a king. So we have Circe's handmaids treating him nicely. If we go up, the first one covers the chairs in beautiful cloth, right? Really fine, fancy cloth. The second one makes sure the table is made out of silver and covers it with gold, things that are very expensive and generally assigned to a king. The third one is mulling, meaning heating with spices, some wine in a silver bowl, and then is going to pour it into golden cups. And the last one draws him a bath. Make sure that it's nice and warm, and she's the one who washes him, and she washes away all of his exhaustion, then rubs him with oils, which are kind of like perfumes, right? She covers him with nice warm cloth and a shirt. She lets him sit on silver chairs with a beautiful carving in it. And then a maid brought water soon in a graceful golden pitcher, and over a silver basin tipped it out, so I might rinse my hands, then pulled a gleaming table to my side. So again, they're making sure everything is gold, right? This golden pitcher, or silver, the silver basin, making sure that he feels like the king he is. A staid housekeeper brought on bread to serve me, appetizers aplenty too, lavish with her bounty. She pressed me to eat, I had no taste for food. I just sat there, mind wandering far away, lost in grim forebodings. So they're bringing him all this food, and instead of eating it, he just stares off in the distance. He's not hungry. Right? He says, I had no taste for food. He's not hungry, even though they are bringing a lot of food. So even with all of this beautiful food and someone begging him to eat, he's not hungry. As soon as Circe saw me, huddled, not touching my food, immersed in sorrow, she sidled near with a coaxing, winged word. Odysseus, why sit there struck dumb? Why just sit there struck dumb, eating your heart out, not touching food or drink? Suspect me of still more treachery? Nothing to fear. Haven't I just sworn my solemn binding oath? So Circe says, dude, what's wrong? Why are you sitting there silently? Why are you eating your heart out? Means why are you filled with sadness and just wallowing in sadness? You're not touching your food or your drink. Do you think that I'm dangerous still? Right? Suspect me of still more treachery? Do you still think I'm dangerous? You have nothing to worry about, nothing to fear. I just promised you my solemn binding oath. I just promised you everything would be okay. So she asked, but I protested, Circe, how could any man in his right mind endure the taste of food and drink before he'd freed his comrades in arms and looked them in the eyes? If you really wanted me to eat and drink, set them free, all my beloved comrades. Let me feast my eyes. So Odysseus says, Circe, no one should be able to eat when his friends and the people who counted on him are pigs? Like, if you really want me to eat your food and drink and relax here, you need to set everyone free. Make them human again. So I demanded. Circe strode on through the halls and out, her wand held high in hand, and, flinging open the pens, drove forth my men who looked like full-grown swine. Facing her, there they stood as she went along the ranks, anointing them one by one with some new magic oil. So Circe hears this and just turns around, walks out, and she brings all of the pigs before her, and they all look like full-grown pigs. They all face her, and she goes one by one and puts some sort of oil on their heads. And look, the bristles grown by the first wicked drug that Circe gave them slipped away from their limbs, and they turned men again, younger than ever, taller by far, more handsome to the eye, and yes, they knew me at once and grasped my hands, and a painful longing for tears overcame us all. A terrible sobbing echoed through the house. So they're back to being human, but not only are they human, they are prettier, they are younger, they are taller, and they have their memories back. So a lot of things have changed since they first became pigs. The goddess herself was moved and standing by me warmly urged me on, a lustrous goddess now. So now Odysseus has changed from calling her evil to calling her a beautiful, glowing, wonderful goddess. Royal son of Laertes, Odysseus tried and true, go at once to your ship at the water's edge, haul her straight up on the shore first, and stow your cargo and running gear in caves. Then back you come and bring your trusty crew. Circe has just told him to essentially move in with all of his men. She said, get your ship out of the water. Any cargo, anything you are carrying, go and hide it in the caves. Stow it away, keep it there so that you can get it later. And then come back and bring your crew with you. Her urging won my stubborn spirit over. Right? Odysseus is again the one telling the story, so of course he's going to make some excuses. He's going to say, it is Circe's fault that we stayed with her. Down I went to my swift ship at the water's edge, and there on the decks I found my loyal crew, consumed with grief and weeping live, warm tears. His crew is crying. Because every time someone leaves, they don't come back. And his crew has just heard Eurylochus tell about the men who went missing. And now they're missing half their friends plus their leader. They thought everyone was dead. They've been crying. But now as calves in stalls when cows come home, droves of them herded back from field to farmyard once they've grazed their fill, as all their young calves come frisking out to meet them, bucking out of their pens, lowing non-stop, jostling, rushing round their mothers. So my shipmates there at the sight of my return came pressing round me, streaming tears, so deeply moved in their hearts they felt as if they'd made it back to their own land, their city, Ithaca's rocky soil where they were bred and reared. This is a long metaphor, and it's literally comparing the ship crew to tiny little baby cows. And it's saying, you know how baby cows get really excited when their mom comes home? The crew got really excited because their mom, Odysseus, came home. And through their tears, their words went winging home. "You're back again, my king. How thrilled we are. As if we'd reached our country, Ithaca, at last. But come, tell us about the fate our comrades met." So of course they want to hear, what happened to everyone else? Why is Odysseus the only one who came back? Still I replied with a timely word of comfort. "Let's haul our ship straight up on the shore first, and stow our cargo and running gear in the caves. Then hurry all of you, come along with me to see our friends in the magic halls of Circe, eating and drinking. The feast flows on forever." This is not the first time we have heard of a feast flowing on forever. At the beginning of this chapter, at Aeolus's palace, the feast flowed on forever. People just really like to eat. That's the whole thing. And Odysseus is like, okay, let's park our ship, let's get it out of the water, let's get everything together, and then we'll go and hang out with Circe. So I said, and they jumped to do my bidding. Only Eurylochus tried to hold my shipmates back, his mutinous outburst aimed at one and all. Poor fools, where are we running now? Why are we tempting fate? Why stumble blindly down to Circe's halls? This word, mutinous, comes up a lot, especially when compared to Eurylochus. Eurylochus is mutinous, meaning he goes against what his captain says. His captain, Odysseus, what Odysseus says, Eurylochus tends to go against. This is going to become a major problem when it comes to the island of the cattle of the sun, coming up in Book 12. Eurylochus is going to be mutinous again, going against the captain, and it will cost him his life. Right now, he's just asking, why are we tempting fate? Right? We're here, we're free men, let's just leave. Why would we go back? She'll turn us all into pigs or wolves or lions, made to guard that place of hers. By force, I tell you. Just as the Cyclops trapped our comrades in his lair, with hot-headed Odysseus beside them all. Thanks to this man's rashness, they died too. Eurylochus is being kind of cruel here. He's saying, look, if we go back to Circe, she's just going to turn us into some animals to guard her palace. And you guys remember the Cyclops? That thing that ate all of our friends? Why did it eat them? Well, because Odysseus, this hot-headed, this impish sort of crazy guy, decided that they needed to go into the cave and that they couldn't leave. So, just like with the Cyclops, it's Odysseus' fault they died there. You guys are really going to listen to Odysseus now? So he declared, and I had half a mind to draw the sharp sword from beside my hip and slice his head off, tumbling down in the dust, close kin that he was. But comrades checked me, each trying to calm me left and right. Captain, we'll leave him here if you command, just where he is to sit and guard the ship. Lead us on to the magic halls of Circe. So the crew does not listen to Eurylochus this time. Things perhaps would have been better if Eurylochus had died here, because he would not be around for Book 12. But instead, he stays alive, and the crew goes with Odysseus to the halls of Circe, to her palace. With that, up from the ship and shore they headed inland, nor did Eurylochus malinger by the hall. He straggled behind the rest, dreading the sharp blast of my rebuke. So Eurylochus comes along, because he's afraid Odysseus will be mad, and will yell at him. right? That's what rebuke means, to kind of tell him off. All the while, Circe bathed my other comrades in her palace, caring and kindly rubbed them sleek with oil and decked them out in fleecy cloaks and shirts. So the same treatment Odysseus got, so does his crew. We found them all together feasting in her halls. Of course, there's eating. Once we had recognized each other, remember, they all look very different now. They're taller, more handsome, younger. But once they had recognized each other, gazing face to face, we all broke down and wept, and the house resounded now. And Circe, the lustrous one, came toward me pleading. So everyone is crying, and Circe's like begging them. Royal son of Laertes, Odysseus, man of action. No more tears now, calm these tides of sorrow. She's like, guy, stop crying. Like, stop it. You're making my whole palace sound like everyone is being tortured. Stop crying. Well, I know what pains you bore on the swarming sea, what punishment you endured from hostile men on land. So Circe knows their story, knows everything about them. But come now, eat your food and drink your wine, till the same courage fills your chests, now as then, when you first set sail from native land, from rocky Ithaca. She says, come here, eat the food, drink the wine, until you feel like you just left Ithaca all those years ago. Now you are burnt out husks, your spirits haggard, seer always brooding over your wanderings long and hard, your hearts never lifting with any joy. You've suffered far too much. She's going to convince them to stay with her for a while. She calls them husks, meaning just the outside, there's nothing inside of them. She calls their spirits haggard, meaning, oh, you know that thing inside you that makes you want to do things? It's just kind of old and worn and torn to pieces. She says that they're always brooding. They're always upset. Nothing ever makes them happy anymore because they've suffered so much. So she enticed and won our battle-hardened spirits over, right? So she's like, look at how much you've been through. Come stay here and rest a while. And Odysseus again is making excuses for why he stayed so long with Circe. And there we sat at ease day in, day out, till a year had run its course, feasting on sides of meat and draughts of heady wine. But then when the year was through and seasons wheeled by, and the months waned and the long days came round again, my loyal comrades took me aside and prodded. Captain, this is madness. High time you thought of your own home at last. If it really is your fate to make it back alive and reach your well-built house and native land. Odysseus kind of forgot about his home. And remember that memory and forgetfulness play a huge role here. Circe's palace is so full of pleasure, so full of luxury, that Odysseus forgets about home. And they stay there a whole year. The crew this time is the one to remind him, hey, Captain, we're going home. Remember, it's been a year. Let's go. And this is enough to bring him around. Their urging brought my stubborn spirit round, so all that day till the sun went down, we sat and feasted on sides of meat and heady wine. So all day they still eat and drink. Then when the sun had set and night came on, and the men lay down to sleep in the shadowed halls. But I went up to that luxurious bed of Circe's, hugged her by the knees, and the goddess heard my winging supplication. So the sun sets, and it's nighttime, and the men go to sleep, but Odysseus goes to Circe's bedroom and hugs her tightly by the legs and says, "Circe, now make good a promise you gave me once. It's time to help me home. My heart longs to be home, my comrades' hearts as well. They wear me down, pleading with me whenever you're away." Odysseus says, "Hey, Circe, way back when, you promised me that we would get home, that you would help me get home. I want to be home, my crew wants to be home, and my crew keeps talking to me every single day, especially whenever you're away, trying to get me to tell you to let us go home." So I pressed, and the lustrous goddess answered me in turn. "Royal son of Laertes, Odysseus, old campaigner, stay on no more in my house against your will. But first another journey calls. You must travel down to the house of death, and the awesome one Persephone, there to consult the ghost of Tiresias, seer of Thebes, the great prophet whose mind remains unshaken." Circe says, "Okay, you want to leave? Leave. You're not a prisoner here. Don't stay here if you do not want to. But you can't go home yet." Circe can see a little bit into the future, but she can't tell Odysseus how to get home. She is not all-knowing. She is not omnipotent. Instead, she knows where he needs to go. She says, "You need to go down into Tartarus, into the land of the dead, and there find this ghost, Tiresias, who still has his mind together. Even in death, Persephone has given him wisdom, everlasting vision to him and him alone. The rest of the dead are empty, flitting shades." So in death, Tiresias is the only one who still has his mind and his memory. Everyone else are just kind of ghosts, right? Shades is just another word for ghosts. So she said, and crushed the heart inside me. Of course Odysseus is crushed. He wants to go home. That's been his entire thing. And he's been here a year, and Circe can't help him. And now he can't even go home. He has to go to the land of the dead. Of course, he does not want to do that. I knelt in her bed and wept. I'd no desire to go on living and see the rising light of day. But once I'd had my fill of tears and writhing there, at last I found the words to venture. "Circe, Circe, who can pilot us on that journey? Who has ever reached the house of death in a black ship?" So Odysseus's first thought is, man, I should just die right here. I don't want to see tomorrow. I don't want to see the rising light of day. But after he cries himself out, he goes, okay, how do we get there? No one's really ever gone there before. The lustrous goddess answered, never pausing, "Royal son of Laertes, Odysseus, born for exploits, let no lack of a pilot at the helm concern you, no. Just step your mast and spread your white sail wide. Sit back and the north wind will speed you on your way." So Odysseus says, hey, who's gonna guide us? And Circe says, stop coming up with problems. You will guide you. Just let the north wind deal with it. But once your vessel has cut across the ocean river, you will raise a desolate coast and Persephone's grove, her tall black poplars, willows whose fruit dies young. Beach your vessel hard by the ocean's churning shore, and make your way down to the moldering house of death. And there to Acheron, the flood of grief, two rivers flow, the torrent river of fire, the wailing river of tears that branches off from Styx, the stream of hate, and a stark crag looms where the two rivers thunder down and meet. We're getting a good description of the setting here. Odysseus will bring his boat. He's going to bank it on a desolate coast, meaning a coast that doesn't have life on it. There, Persephone grows two types of trees, poplars and willows. And both of these types of trees give fruit that dies young. Circe says, beach your vessel hard, right? So make sure your boat is pretty secure there. And then as you go down into the house of the dead, into essentially hell, right? There are two rivers. There's the river of wailing tears and the river of fires that come off of the main river Styx. And there's a steep cliff where the two rivers thunder down and they meet. So the two rivers kind of fall off this cliff and meet together. Once there, go forward, hero. Do as I say now. Dig a trench of about a forearm's depth and length, and around it pour libations out to all the dead, first with milk and honey, then with mellow wine, then water third and last, and sprinkle glistening barley over it all, and vow again and again to all the dead, to the drifting, listless spirits of the ghosts, that once you return to Ithaca, you will slaughter a barren heifer in your halls, the best you have, and load a pyre with treasures. And to Tiresias, alone, apart, you will offer a sleek black ram, the pride of all your herds. This is Circe's plan. Go to where these two rivers meet at the top of a cliff. Take your forearm, the distance between your wrist and your elbow, and dig this hole. And in it, pour in first milk and honey, then mellow wine, right? So not the super strong stuff they gave to the Cyclops. Then water, and then sprinkle some barley grains over it. And promise to every ghost who will listen that when you get back to Ithaca, you're going to kill a cow for them. You're going to load this pyre, which is just like a big fire, with all sorts of treasures to give to them. And specifically and only to Tiresias, you will give a sleek black ram, a big sheep. And once your prayers have invoked the nations of the dead in their dim glory, slaughter a ram and a black ewe, turning both their heads towards Erebus, but turn your head away, looking toward the ocean river. So once everyone has heard you, then you're going to kill a ram, a male sheep, and a ewe, a female sheep. And you will turn their dead heads toward Erebus, but you will turn your head away. Suddenly, the countless shades of the dead and gone will surge around you there. So as soon as you kill these two sheep, the male and the female, all of a sudden, all of these ghosts will show up. But order your men at once to flay the sheep that lie before you, killed by your ruthless blade, and burn them both, and then say prayers to the gods, to the almighty god of death and dread Persephone. So she says, don't worry about the ghosts. Have your men flay the sheep, meaning to kind of cut them open, and then have them be burned. Have them as an offering to the gods, specifically Hades, god of death, and his wife Persephone. But you, draw your sharp sword from beside your hip and sit alert there, and never let the ghosts of the shambling, shiftless dead come near that blood till you have questioned Tiresias yourself. Do not let the ghosts touch the blood until Tiresias shows up. Soon, soon the great seer will appear before you, captain of armies. He will tell you the way to go, the stages of your voyage, how you can cross the swarming sea and reach home at last. So Tiresias is meant to tell them all of the ways to get home, or tells them that Tiresias will tell them all of these different steps they have to take, all of the different things they have to do to get home. And with those words, Dawn rose on her golden throne, and Circe dressed me quickly in a sea cloak and shirt. And while the queen slipped on a loose, glistening robe, filmy, a joy to the eye, and round her waist she ran a brocaded golden belt, and over her head a scarf to shield her brow. So now it's morning. Circe makes sure that Odysseus is dressed first. And then Odysseus, who is a man, and who is telling this story, tells us, ooh, she puts on some nice clothes. It's so nice. It like forms to her body. It's filmy, so you can see through some of it. It's a joy to the eye. And then she covers her head with a scarf. And I strode on through the halls to stir my men, hovering over each with a winning word. Up now, no more lazing away in sleep. We must set sail. Queen Circe has shown the way. So he wakes everyone up. I brought them round, my hearty friends at arms, but not even from there could I get them safely off without a loss, right? So even here, in a very friendly hall of Circe, there's death. There was a man, Elpenor, the youngest in our ranks, none too brave in battle, none too sound in mind. So Elpenor is the youngest. He's a coward. He's not very brave. He's not very strong. And he's not very smart. He's none too sound in mind. He's definitely not the smartest guy. He'd strayed from his mates in Circe's magic halls, and keen for cool night air, sodden with wine, he'd bedded down on her roofs. Elpenor got drunk and slept on the top of Circe's palace for some reason. But, roused by the shouts and tread of marching men, he leapt up with a start at dawn. But still so dazed, he forgot to climb back down again by the long ladder. Head first from the roof he plunged, his neck snapped from the backbone, his soul flew down to death. Elpenor woke up still drunk and realized, oh crap, I'm supposed to be somewhere. And he steps off the roof and breaks his neck. Once on our way, I gave the men their orders. You think we are headed home, our own dear land? Well, Circe sets us a rather different course. Down to the house of death and the awesome one, Persephone, there to consult the ghost of Tiresias, seer of Thebes. So Odysseus has now told them the plan. So I said, and it broke my shipmates' hearts. They sank onto the ground, moaning, tore their hair, but it gained us nothing. What good can come of grief? So they're sad, but what can they do about it? Back to the swift ship at water's edge we went, our spirits deep in anguish, faces wet with tears. But Circe got to the dark hall before us, tethered a ram and a black ewe close by, slipping past unseen. Who can glimpse a god who wants to be invisible, gliding here and there? This is the end of Book 10. So, just a quick recap. The men first stopped at the Aeolian Island, and the god of winds, they stayed there a month, and Aeolus's parting gift to Odysseus was the sack that held the winds. Then they get really close to Ithaca, and the men open the bag, and all the winds blow them back to Aeolus's island. Aeolus believes that they are cursed, refuses to help them again. So, with no wind to help them, they row for 7 days to the island of the Lastrygonians. There, Odysseus sends some men to investigate, and they meet the princess, who brings them to the queen and king. The king Antiphates, eats one of Odysseus's men, and then all of the Lastrygonians come up and sink all the ships. Odysseus is the only ship to survive, and they sail it on. They anchor on Circe's island. They rest there for 2 days, then they split into 2 groups, and Eurylochus's group goes to Circe's palace. She brings them inside, gives them food and drink, and then turns them into pigs. Eurylochus runs back and tells Odysseus, who goes to save his men. On the way, Hermes stops him, says this herb, moly, is the only thing that can save you. And then, when it does save you, pretend like you're going to stab Circe, and she will invite you to her bed to sleep with her. Make her promise an oath not to hurt you or your men again. This all happens exactly like Hermes says, and Odysseus is washed and anointed with oil, and then convinces Circe to give his men back. The men who come back are, of course, younger, more handsome, taller than before. The men stay on that island for a year in luxury, but then they start growing restless, and they finally remind Odysseus what their goal is, to go home. Odysseus shows us that the gods are not all-knowing. Circe doesn't know how to get him home, but she does know someone who can help him, a man named Tiresias. Circe tells Odysseus to find the spot where the river of fire and the river of tears meet, to dig a hole there, and to pour milk and honey, wine, and water into that hole, sprinkle it with barley, as some sort of offering to the dead. Then he must promise to kill a cow and a ram when he gets back to Ithaca. Then he has to kill 2 sheep, a male and a female, and make sure their heads are facing one way while his will face another. Then ghosts will show up. Then at that moment, his crew must burn the bodies of the sheep, while Odysseus keeps all of the ghosts away from the blood, demanding Tiresias. When Tiresias shows up, he will tell Odysseus how to get home. This is sort of a weird part because the men are making the choice to leave the island, but they're kind of blindly following Circe's advice. So it's kind of mixing their free will to leave the island with the fate and obedience and gods controlling everything through Circe. Odysseus and his crew wake up the next morning to depart and realize that Elpenor, the youngest of the crew, got drunk slept on the roof, and fell off and broke his neck. So they're going down to the underworld, and Elpenor's probably going to be there. Elpenor is this example of the lack of self-restraint that we saw with the Suchones back in Book 9. Elpenor gets so drunk, he sleeps in a dangerous place, wakes up still drunk, falls off the roof. Then Odysseus tells his men that they're not going home, they have to go to the land of the dead. And the men start crying and tear out their hair and get really upset. This reaction shows us they are not out seeking glory or adventure. They're done with that. They just want to get home. That's their whole goal. All right, this is the end of Book 10.